This content is brought to you in part by Real Marketing, the only marketing firm recommended exclusively by the Institute. Real Marketing utilizes over 25 years of expertise, and their products are built and customized for you to dominate any neighborhood, anywhere. Go to realmarketing4you.com. That's realmarketing4you.com. Welcome to A State of Mind, a podcast series all about motivating, inspiring, and educating you in the art of selling luxury real estate. My name is Diane Hartley, and I'm the president of the Institute for Luxury Home Marketing. Today, we'll be talking to Kofi Nartey. Kofi is a real estate professional in the LA area, and he is the leading authority on celebrity and sports and entertainment real estate. Kofi, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Couldn't be more excited to sit here and chat with you. So one of the things that is, I think, one of the hardest things to do is introduce people, because you are so much more than what I just said. So can you talk to us a little bit about Kofi in 2020? Where are you today?
Wow, Kofi in 2020. I feel like I'm standing on the back of 17 years of work and experience in this industry. On the precipice of an amazing year, as I think the energy for everybody right now is amazing. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to share with you and have a discussion with you. My own company and team, we're shifting a little bit this year to start encompassing new developments. We're growing our sports and entertainment practice. We're continuing to bring agents on nationally. So we're excited as to where things are going. No complaints so far.
Good. Yeah, that's really great. When we talked about what this was going to be when we sat down together, one of the things that I think I admire the most about you is how well you work with everyone, okay? Not just the people that you're working with on a daily basis, but you have this energy about you where people just want to work with you. And so when we look at real estate today and this idea of information being in everyone's hands and the power of the real estate professional, we wanted to talk about how do you develop and keep these relationships that you have with other real estate professionals, not just in your market, but really all over the world, and the importance of that. So kind of off we go. Put on our seatbelts. Here we go.
So I think the first thing is having a different approach to business. I'm in LA, and LA is really like the land of sharks when it comes to real estate. You know, a lot of reality shows are just that, the reality shows, they're fake and so forth. But the idea of a cutthroat environment and there being sharks in the water and blood in the water, it's real. And there's a lot of that on a daily basis. So part of it is just a mind shift from competition to what I describe as coopetition, right? We're cooperating with each other. You know, a lot of times we look at it as we're fighting against other agents, but we need each other to get deals done. We need each other to service our clients better. So it starts with the agent-to-agent relationship.
That's great. And I like the coopetition. I heard you probably the very first time I saw you as an instructor for the Institute's course. Tell us a little bit more about what that means, right? It's a great word, but what does that mean?
Our job is to shepherd our clients from point A to point Z. You know, not even A to B. That's too easy. A to Z. This is real estate. So there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, forwards and backs, complications from A to Z. And to do that and to do it effectively, it takes a team, not only your own team of administrative support, escrow, title, all the people who are players in the equation, but also the other agent, the other side of it. And so if we don't have good rapport, if we don't have a good relationship with that other agent, we're going to run into more hurdles than are necessary. And often, because the other agent is the same shepherd that you are for their client, it's really communicating in a way that gets everyone to the desired outcome, right? It's not just about winning or losing. It's what's the actual desired outcome. And I come back to that as a North Star, right? I always say, what's the desired outcome? That should be the North Star for everyone in the equation.
And the North Star would be getting the deal done.
Getting the deal done.
Right. Okay.
They want to sell, or we want to sell, you want to buy. How do we get us there?
Great. So kind of give us a couple of examples of when that doesn't work, right? I mean, because we're going to get to how does it work and
Sure.
what's this great world we all want to live in. But
let me tell you this agent. His name is no, I'm just kidding.
I thought you were going to go there.
You know, when it doesn't work, and this is easy to relate to because we're all humans, first and foremost. It doesn't work when we lose a little bit of our professionalism and let sometimes the human side seep into the equation, right? So I say our clients are allowed to be human in the process, but the agents, we have to remain professional. When the other agent, I say that because it never happens to me, of course, never, please. When the other agent is getting emotional,
Emotional, Kofi.
Emotional.
Okay.
Or sometimes it's the pressure from your client
Yeah.
that seeps into your own emotions and presentation. That usually is when we see hiccups, right? There's always a way to communicate. There's always a way to communicate effectively. It's finding the right words. It's finding the right timing, right? And it's sometimes just softening the blow. But I think things can go awry either when emotions come into the equation or sometimes it's purely miscommunication.
Interesting, because texting.
Oh
Right.
my gosh.
So you've got some rules around that I've
Yes.
heard you talk about
Yes.
when you're doing deals.
That's
Can you talk about them? I think they're great.
Yeah, no, I think so much can be lost in texting. I think even from the beginning with our clients, we always have to ask permission to even text, right? So especially dealing with luxury or affluent clientele, the assumption nowadays is everyone texts. Well, not everyone wants to text. Now, I've always asked, and I've almost always had them say, yes, it's fine. But with texting, I only text updates. Like if it's a quick update in terms of confirming an appointment time or something like that. If it's something subjective or if there's any emotions around it, I tell them to call me.
Yep.
Right? The text says, call me. That's the only text that I actually send. The other thing about texting too is I always say, don't text good news. You always call if you have good news to share with the other agent, with your clients. And I say that because you don't want to cheat yourself out of the emotional response from your clients, that positive emotional response. Our jobs are hard. Like I said, A to Z. A to Z is a lot of heartache, a lot of pain, a lot of canceled escrows, or starting escrow, all of that. So if there are moments where we get to share good news, call, hear their voice on the other end of the line.
That is probably my favorite Kofi-ism, because I remember the first time I heard you talk about that.
Yeah.
You think about how does that come into play in your whole life,
Right.
right? So, so if miscommunication is the center of when these relationships can tend to get off center, what other tips would you give about not just texting, but this process now has become so automated? And I think the automation can tend to put the agent in a different place than, say, the agent was before, where you had to come and bring a piece of paper.
Right.
So how have you adapted to that and kept the relationships?
Right. I think we have to remember the value add that we bring as agents. I think that's critical in a day and age where like the velocity of information is higher than ever. It's faster than ever. The access to information is greater than ever. It's how we interpret that information for our clients that makes us the professional and makes us the value add. So I always say, never just send a generic email, never just forward a listing, for example. Always give your thoughts, your 2 cents, your value add, the information that your client may not have access to, the motivations of the seller, the other comps in the neighborhood, things that you can analyze and give an opinion on that differentiates you from technology, period.
Right.
Use technology to your advantage. It's not the enemy. It's something to embrace. I remember when Zillow first hit, years and years ago when Zillow came along, it was like this green monster had come into our industry. And I was like, no, we have to embrace it. We have to embrace it. And I told my clients, listen, Zillow's great. If you see something on there, let me know. We use it as another tool in our toolbox, right? The challenge with it, especially initially, is the information wasn't always accurate. I said it's a great place to start, but you don't want to finish there because you want to use me as the professional to help you analyze the information and make sure that you're making accurate decisions.
That's great. That's really great. And so now kind of circling back to this idea of at the end of the day, you're really negotiating and working the deal through the other agents.
Right.
And if how do you build those relationships? I mean, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't poke at you a little bit right now, but you have a perfect name, right? Sure. So you have a first name that everybody says it's Kofi. Sure. So, how do you leverage that?
I think, it's taken some time, obviously. I've been in the industry for a while, but even as I'm giving guidance to newer, younger agents in the industry, getting to know the agents that you'll ultimately do business with, right? And that's an easy thing to do, especially if you're in a geographic farm. Go to the open houses, go to the brokers' opens, go to the midnight or evening caravan events, right?
Yep.
And get to know them, because even if it's a year from now, when you go into a transaction with that agent and they can put a name with a face, it makes the conversation so much easier. It humanizes the process. But it all starts with getting to know the other players in your area.
So one of the things that you do well is you have meaningful conversations, right? Some of the things that's less natural for some people to have memorable interactions.
Right.
Where did you learn that? Right. Where'd that come from?
I think it's part of my D personality, high D, for those who are disc. Alpha personality is another way of expressing it. In my business life, I kind of lead with my lowercase a, so I have to, relate to people. But in my personal life, I get bored easy with surface level things. And so it's more interesting to ask a more probing conversation question, or, find out something a little bit more detailed. And I think an easy hack for that, for people who are trying to transition into easier, more natural conversations, is if you went to a birthday party, if you went into a room and the sign on the front of the door of that room said, "No one in here is selling or buying a home for 10 years." Okay. You would say nothing about real estate. You'd go have drinks and have fun, and there'd be no pressure. There's no pressure to sell. There's no pressure to sell yourself. There's no pressure to probe, right? And I try to go into conversations that way. We are fortunate. We're in an industry that inevitably people talk about real estate. We're just blessed in that way.
Yeah.
And even when people ask you what you do, you get to talk about what you do. But if you remove the pressure of having to sell them or getting to know them for a specific reason, it makes the conversations so much easier. The only other caveat that I will give you is we are in sales, right? So meeting people, adding to our database, it's a real part of what we do. The key to me is getting their information. The sale will come later. The sales conversation will come later. The ask or the call to action can come later. The first thing, get to know them and get their information.
Do you maintain a separate database of real estate professionals?
I do, especially with my training with the Institute, the teaching that I do, and it takes me in different parts of the country. I keep a separate database of those agents as well.
And do you, with air quotes, do you talk to them often, and how?
Probably not often enough.
Sure.
I would say they probably hear from me once a month, which is not terrible. But I also know that I'm not sending them things that aren't relevant to them.
Right.
And we talk about this in the course, in the training. You have to segment your database. It's one of the things that we teach, because I tell them jokingly, listen, if you invite me to your open house in Texas, I'm not coming. And if you keep inviting me, I'm going to unsubscribe. Exactly. That's exactly it. But I think, I don't mind market information though, because it's interesting to see how things are trading in New York versus Texas versus LA versus Miami. And so I think those kind of updates and reminding people that you're the expert in your area in some capacity or another, that's always fair game.
Let's talk about that a little more.
Sure.
This idea of really leveraging your expertise. I introduced you, and really I think everyone introduces you, as something to do with celebrity, because you wrote a book called Celebrity, available on Amazon. Did you like that?
I like that.
It's a great book. It's an easy read, and you get to know you a little bit in the book, which I really like. But yeah, let's spend some time talking about that. This idea of leveraging.
Sure. I think first you have to have something to leverage.
Yes.
Right? You have to have an identity that's identifiable. You have to be known for something or be lost in the sea of everything. I'm kind of on a roll right now. These are some good little one-liners, aren't they?
I committed that one to memory. Yeah, it's a Kofi-ism.
Some Kofi-isms are going to come out of this today.
They really
but no, truthfully though, it's especially in a market like ours. We're in an oversaturated industry, and the barriers to entry to get into real estate are low.
Very.
So there are a lot of real estate agents. There are a lot of part-time agents. In your geographic farm, in your area, in your demographic niche, you have to be known for something.
Right.
And creating that brand and then leveraging that brand to a level of visibility is something that, I've worked a long time at, done a pretty good job at, continuing to build that, and always encourage other agents to do that. And that can be in the form of being an area expert, being a certain type of demographic expert, something that you can own. That means knowing it inside and out, and also letting other people know that you know it inside.
And how do you do that? How do you let other people know what you know?
I think we're in a day and age where it's become kind of easier than ever, and probably will get even easier because of social media. You're able to even create your own platforms where you're sharing information, you're leveraging your skill set, you're being a resource to others, and even letting people know that you're the person to go to, even if they have a question that's not going to pay you any money, right?
Right.
And sharing that information, they're
So
going to find
give us an
it.
example of that. Give us an example
Sure.
of a time when, somebody just reached out to you.
Sure.
And said, "Hey, Kofi, tell me about this."
Sure. I'll give you a very specific example.
Please.
It was a business manager who had a client who was in escrow in Arizona. And this is a business manager who I had already known for 3-4 years.
And a business manager of an agent or a sports figure?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yes. They represent a lot of athletes, and they're sort of on the business management side of things. And I'd known this gentleman for a while. He had a client, and I'd always told him, listen, if you ever have questions about real estate for any of your clients anywhere, I may not know all the laws, but I know the questions to ask, and I may be able to help you navigate through that transition or that transaction. And so sure enough, he called me, and I gave him some key things to ask. And I said, don't tell them that you talked to another agent and the agent said, because agents hate that. I hate that. When my clients say, well, this other agent told me, I'm like, well, you didn't hire that other agent. But nonetheless, I said, I can be the agent whisperer, right?
There you go. Oh, that's another Kofi-ism.
There it is right there. So I told them, ask these questions. This will help move things forward. They did. Fast forward, the deal was able to close. I didn't make a single dollar from that.
Right.
Fast forward a year later, they had a client who was looking for a property in New York. I referred them to an agent. Nothing came of it. Fast forward another year later. So now we're 5-6 years into this relationship, 2 times where they've reached out to me asking for help. One time where, it saved their client. And we were able to close on a very specific deal in New York, right? That was $4.4 million purchase.
Wow.
And I was able to collect a commission, from that, from referring that business. And that was a long process of, just being a resource to this person.
And so for you, this idea of your specialty, right? Your expertise as it applies to real estate.
Sure.
Right? Tying in the way that people move through being, celebrities, sports figures, right? They just sort of work in a rarefied air, right? For someone else, right? When you meet people at parties or whatever, like what have you seen other than that type of expertise that's interesting to you, right? Because I think people generally don't look at themselves in the mirror and go, I'm great at this.
Right. I think the easiest way to express it is to really unpack the word expertise.
Okay.
Because I think we all know expertise when we see it or when we hear it. And it gets thrown around a lot. And a lot of people say, I'm an expert at this, I'm an expert at that. Then you meet the real expert. And you're like, holy, and I won't say it.
Don't do it.
Because we promised we wouldn't say
didn't.
it. But we know what we're going to say right there.
We do.
Right?
Bleep.
And that recognition, that acknowledgement, that understanding of, wow, that was next level, that interpretation of the information was next level, that analysis was next level, that's true expertise. And it takes, if you decide you're going to become an expert at something, it's, I tell my kids every morning, when I'm either dropping them off at school or what have you, be excellent, right? And ask yourself, is what I'm doing excellent in everything that you're doing? And so even my son this morning, I dropped him off at school and I said, make sure you're excellent today. He said, I'm going to be, Dad. He said, even when I run my laps at PE, I'm going to be excellent at running my laps.
Can I share the photo?
Sure.
It was a great photo. So So I hear it in your voice. It's not hard to hear that you really admire that.
I admire, and I've seen it in people that, have nothing to do with sports and entertainment. They have nothing to do with it. It's just the way that they do their business. And, thank you to you too, because being part of the Institute, I get to meet agents from all over the country.
You sure do. Yeah.
And you catch some of these agents in the hallway. They get to talk to each other a lot more than I get to talk to all of them. But I'll talk to some of them at lunch or talk to some of them after the course. And they're telling me a little bit about their business, or they're showing me parts of it. And I'm like, wow. That's excellence. And you can see it and recognize it right away, and it's good because it inspires and reminds me to be excellent in the ways that I need to be excellent. But the way that they're following up with their clients, the level of market knowledge, the process and service levels that they're providing for their clients. Excellent.
So as we kind of craft this in thinking about what does this all mean when you're developing relationships with other agents, I'm going to kind of lift up the covers a little bit here.
Okay.
This idea that some deals are going to progress a little better because the agents have a relationship.
Right.
So now let's talk about when that really works. And this idea of being utilized as an expert. You come in and then you go out.
Right. So it's something that you can specifically leverage to even grow and expand your business, right? I have several agents that I've done multiple deals with because they've called on me for my expertise, and I've in turn also called on them for their expertise. They're calling on me sometimes to help them with a celebrity client or with a sports client or entertainment client and helping them sell that property or position that property. Sometimes it's just a property that would appeal to that niche, and they know that I have unprecedented access to it. So they're calling on me to help with that. And the same thing for me, if it's area expertise that I might need in a certain community or certain neighborhood where maybe I've sold 2 homes, but I know an agent who sold 20, I will leverage their expertise to 1, lock in the business, and 2, be excellent in servicing that client and that listing, which in turn leads to additional business opportunities.
So you've been doing this for 17 years. In that time period, just on this very specific thing we're talking about, which is collaboration or co-opetition.
Co-opetition.
How has that changed? So go back to the early days, right, as you were learning this.
Yeah. I think we're seeing it a bit more, but not enough.
Okay.
Not enough. And I think the reason, I think once you start dealing with more of the higher producing agents, and especially in the luxury market, and I can speak specifically to LA, the way that a lot of those agents navigate is through these sidebar conversations of how are we going to get this deal done, right? So you are controlling more of the process. You're not just hitting the ball over the net and they're hitting it back. You're meeting at the net and saying, listen, if I hit it here, what's going to happen? Right? Does your client have a good forehand or backhand?
This is good. This is great.
Right?
I'm a tennis player, so I get all
you get it. You get it. So you know then where to hit the ball, right? So that you can get the proper return. And I think that we're seeing more of that happening. Simultaneously, I think that the agents coming into the business have to learn it faster.
Yeah.
They have to learn it faster. Sometimes I see the scratching and the clawing and the wanting to make it and wanting to make it on their own and not wanting to collaborate in a way that's detrimental. And those who either get the right mentor or learn this faster will also experience success much faster.
You talk about co-listing, right?
Yeah.
When you're teaching, and when we teach, it's all different kinds of people in the room.
Right.
Okay. So you want to talk about that strategy a little?
Definitely. I think it's an underutilized tool, co-listing properties. I haven't shied away from it myself. I'm 17 years experienced. I teach around the country, and I still will co-list in a heartbeat if it makes more sense to do it than to try to go after it myself. And my saying is I can sell a house anywhere.
Yep.
Right. But if I don't know the best schools in the neighborhood, if I don't know the best place to get a craft beer or burger, then I need to co-list because we're selling lifestyle. we're selling that aspect of the business and
Right.
of the community. And so I reach out, I collaborate with other agents, and even for younger, less experienced agents who are either transitioning into real estate or transitioning into a higher price point or transitioning into a luxury market, it's one of the best ways you can go is by co-listing with an experienced agent in that area.
What's the first time you did it? Tell us about that. Go way back in the annals
That's
of
a
Kofi.
Good question. Let me think. The first time that I co-listed a property. That's a good question. I'm trying to think because I've been
17 years is a long
17
time.
years is a long time. It's a long time.
What pops into your head of
what
like,
pops
wow,
into my
this
head?
really worked for me?
It worked. That's a good one. It's a good one. I've done it so many times. I can't remember the early times. But I'll give you an easy example. I had a sports entertainment client, and they had a property to sell in a neighborhood that I hadn't sold much. And this was earlier in my real estate career. So I'm in LA. My office is in Beverly Hills. There are 100 places you can get to that are 3, 4, 5 miles on a map that are 45 minutes to an hour and a half in traffic, right? So it doesn't mean that you actually service those areas and service them well. So I called on this other agent that I knew and respected, and we co-listed the property. And it did a couple of things. One, it saved on my commute because I didn't have to drive there every time myself. Two, he had a level of area expertise that was a value add to the client. So it made us shine and made us look really good. And then three, I had a glimpse into the expertise of another agent. Like, how did he work? How did his team work? What was his follow-up like? What was his cadence with the client like? And I was able to steal some of those nuggets for myself. Fast forward to literally not even 2 years after that, we did 5 more deals together.
Wow.
He called on me for things that were on my side of town. I continued to call on him for other things out there. And that collaboration just made sense. Even from a leverage standpoint, it made sense. So I would say that's an example of one that really worked well.
That's great. And it turned into so much more.
So much more. So much more.
So-
we're in escrow on a deal right now.
Oh, that's
He's on the other
amazing.
side. We're not co-listing it.
Right.
But it's exactly that. He's someone that I've known, and this is,
How
8,
many
9
years
years.
have you known? 8, 9 years.
Yeah.
And so now
Yeah.
you're sitting in the situation that we talked about initially,
Yep.
which is you're on the other side,
I'm on the other side.
but you've worked closely with him. You have a relationship with
Right.
him. How is that deal going?
It's going very well.
Good.
With the agents, with the clients, as I think about it.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. We're in a great place. For those who know real estate, all contingencies are removed. So
Okay.
but it's new construction. So we're still dealing with
Yep.
some city stuff, getting the gas turned on, little things like that. But early on, the bumps in the road were not from the agents. They were from contentious moments with the clients.
Sure.
But because of my relationship with them, we were able to navigate that. And it was very interesting because you don't see this too often, and I probably won't see it too much even moving forward, but I knew his client as well. So even as it got really bumpy with him and his client, he was like, why don't you reach out to him?
Nice.
And so I couldn't give him specific guidance because, there's a fiduciary responsibility.
Yes.
But it was interesting because his client really just needed to vent to someone other than him. So
Right.
I got on the phone. I didn't even have to give him guidance. I just listened. I was like, you're right. No, that does suck. You're right. You're right. No, well, we're going to get it done. That's kind of how my side of the call was. That was it. But it worked and it moved us forward.
Sure.
And
Sure.
that
And,
was that agent to agent relationship and
I think
trust.
everyone's thinking what I'm thinking, which is either it's a really small world or everyone.
Definitely not. It is though, but it is a small world.
Yes.
I definitely don't know everyone, but you'd be surprised how many people know you that you don't realize know you. And so you have to be careful. And this is a long game. I tell agents that a lot too. It's a long game. It's about your reputation. And your reputation can be diminished in a moment. So these relationships that we have with agents and these relationships that we have with our clients, we have to preserve those and always
Right.
try to do what's right.
So that kind of brings us to the topic of reputation management. Okay. And so you can be proactive about that
Right.
by going in your database and talking to these folks
Right.
in a more proactive way. But how do you really, in this world of social media and when someone can post things about you and someone can do all of those things, can you give us some tips or more Kofi-isms around reputation management?
Yeah, I think, one of my Kofi-isms around social media in general is the question you have to ask yourself is, would I hire my social media profile?
That's good. That's a
Right?
good one.
Because when people Google you, for SEO, if you're not familiar with it, search engine optimization. For SEO, social media is really highly ranked.
Oh yeah.
So your Instagram, your LinkedIn profile, Facebook, those are going to pop up usually on the first page every time. And so what you're posting matters in terms of your reputation. And you have to take it with a grain of salt. Like you're going to laugh at this, but as a mission for 2020, I want more people not to like me because I've been too nice to too many people for too long, which means I'm not being, totally authentic, right? But you have to also realize, right, that you're not going to make everyone happy and everyone's not going to like you. But if you've done what's right, your reputation won't suffer. I've had people that, I've gone in, I've tried to help. I've tried to, help them either with their careers or given them a chance with my team, and they turn around and want to badmouth me.
Yep.
But there's nothing to support what they're saying other than maybe their feelings were hurt because I either let them go from my team or, things like that. But you have to really be mindful of, the actual actions you take, the emails you send, the text messages you send. All of these things can come back to bite you.
So one of the things you've done, and I've known you for a while now, and I think one of the more impressive things you did was the launch of your foundation. And while it's not exactly on topic, it sort of is, right? Because that's a place where, first I want you to talk about the foundation. Sure. Let's start there.
Sure. So 2 years ago, my wife and I started the Nartey Sports Foundation. I played football. I played football at Berkeley and then went to the Raiders briefly, got hurt. My wife played in the Women's World Cup in 2003. So we both realized the importance and impact of sports participation. And so we figured, what better way to give back than to provide access to underserved youth communities for sports participation and all the benefits that come with it. So now, part of every transaction through my real estate business, we make a donation in the client's name to the foundation. And then we have annual events, annual galas to raise money to service underserved youth sports.
Very nice. Very nice. And so when you think about what we're talking about here, how has that helped you more, get really precise about this idea of leveraging?
It's a couple of things. One, it's so much easier to be motivated to do something for others than for yourself. And oh my God, it's so much easier to ask for help for others than it is to ask for help for yourself, right? If you told me to call a bunch of people and tell them to support my real estate business, well, I'll make maybe two or three of the 100 calls I'm supposed to make. But if it's to support youth sports, I have no problem calling and texting and emailing and saying, hey, here's what we have going on. Here's what we're trying to support. Can you help? And, through the events, through the galas that we've had, through the fundraisers that we've had, we've built this community of people. And it's amazing to see how quickly people will step up to help, because a lot of people want to help. It's in them. It's more in us than it isn't. We just don't always have an outlet for it or an avenue to go ahead and demonstrate that help. So I think we're providing that for people, and we're actually, providing some help and support for
That's great.
Kids in sports.
And so when you think about how this all kind of ties together, right? Your platform, I'll just call it a platform.
Sure.
I mean, it's a lovely thing, and I'm a big fan of youth sports and what that does and how that shapes kids. But that platform is also consistent with what your expertise is. So how can you give some other examples of that? Sports and entertainment feels like the tip of a pin, right?
Yeah.
What would be another example of that you've seen done well?
Of another type of expertise?
And then how do you, because there's so many tentacles to that. And I certainly don't want to give the impression that came 2 years ago, right? I'm sure you and Mimi were sitting around for 10 years before that, talking about it and doing things to move that eventual idea forward.
Right. I've seen a lot of people find things that they are authentically passionate about and they leverage it into these types of opportunities. I think, what it comes down to is community building in one form or another that's beneficial to the community and to the world, right? Whether it's, yoga events or if it's
with goats.
With goats, there you go.
It's a thing.
Exactly. Or, blanket drives, food drives, different things that bring like-minded people together.
Right.
That you can tether to your brand. And the reason you even tether it to your brand is it gives people a reason to root for you. It gives people a reason to want to work with you. And it even motivates you within your company to do better so you can do more. Right?
Yes.
So I think that that's something that has fueled us as well.
That's great. Well, Kofi, this was enjoyable as always, and I think really informative for our audience.
Good.
So any final words?
No, other than this is...
Come on, one more Kofi-ism.
One more Kofi-ism.
No pressure.
Well, listen, I'll give you one of my favorite Kofi-isms, and it's life is about the experiences you have and the experiences you give others. And I hope that this podcast and the series of podcasts will help others move the needle in their business. I always enjoy having these conversations with you. You're one of my favorite people, as I even mentioned you in my book. I came up in this business with very few mentors, and so finding, the people I can count on one hand that are trusted advisors as I'm making big decisions, and counting you as one of them is really meaningful to me too. So thank you for always lending me your ear.
Thank you.
Now, if you could give me some of your hair too, we'd be even better shape. This would be great.
Well, thanks, Kofi. My favorite.
That's it. All right, we've got to do my signature clap. Are
yes,
you ready?
Sir. I'm ready.
And those who are listening who've done it with me, play along. Here we go. When I say single clap, give me a single clap. When I say double, give me a double. Give me a single, double, single. You nailed it.
I did it. Thank you.
All righty.
Thanks, Kof.
You got it.
This content is brought to you in part by Real Marketing, the only marketing firm recommended exclusively by the Institute. Real Marketing utilizes over 25 years of expertise, and their products are built and customized for you to dominate any neighborhood, anywhere. Go to realmarketing4you.com. That's realmarketing, the number 4, you.com.